I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching Eagle News International. On tonight's headlines. South Korea reported its highest daily number of coronavirus cases on Friday as the country's holiday celebrations were marred by a harsh third wave of COVID-19. President Duterte is set to meet with the interagency task force for the management of emerging infectious diseases and infectious disease workers on Saturday to discuss the new strain of coronavirus detected in the United Kingdom. The Brexit trade and security deal was finalized on the eve of December 25, just a week before the United Kingdom finally leaves the orbit of the 27-nation bloc, its biggest trading partner. And a 6.3 magnitude quake rocked the Philippines Friday, according to the USGS, with residents in the capital Manila reporting buildings shaking. First, South Korea reported its highest daily number of coronavirus cases on Friday as the country's holiday celebrations were marred by a harsh third wave of COVID-19. The nation has been held up as a model of how to combat the virus, with the public largely following official guidelines. But Friday saw a record 1,241 new infections. 70% of the fresh cases came from the Greater Seoul area, home to half of the country's 52 million people. In an attempt to contain the rising infection numbers, from Wednesday, private social gatherings of more than 4 people in the Greater Seoul area were banned until January 3 by officials. Churches have switched to online or small-scale services, and ski resorts and national parks have been shut down nationwide. South Korea has been expanding its mass testing program, providing tests for free in the Greater Seoul area until January 3, and more than 118,000 tests were conducted on Thursday alone, according to authorities. New cases have also emerged from various venues and communities in recent weeks, including long-term care facilities, a prison, army units, churches, and schools, while hospitals in the capital area have been struggling with ICU bed shortages. In Australia's New South Wales state, it has increased the COVID-19 testing to rein in a resurgence of coronavirus infections in Sydney. A record nearly 70,000 tests were conducted on Thursday across New South Wales. New South Wales recorded 7 new locally acquired COVID-19 cases as the Northern Beaches cluster grew to 108. Sydney's Bondi Beach, normally packed with dressed-up surfers celebrating the holidays, looks much emptier this year as the threat of a growing cluster of cases in northern Sydney keeps the crowds away. Australia has reported more than 28,000 coronavirus cases, 908 deaths so far, thanks in part to widespread testing, which is free at public health facilities. President Duterte is set to meet with the interagency task force for the management of emerging infectious diseases and infectious disease workers on Saturday to discuss the new strain of coronavirus detected in the United Kingdom. In a text message sent to reporters on Friday, Senator Bongo said that the president's meeting with the IATF, EID, and infectious disease experts would be held in Malacanang Palace. In an interview, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the meeting would take place at the Malago Clubhouse at about 6 p.m. Saturday. The president scheduled a meeting following his approval of the IATF EID's resolution that bans Philippine flights from the United Kingdom from December 24 to the 31st due to concerns over the spread of a new variant of COVID-19. Senator Go said the president had decided to cut short his break as he's very much concerned with the reported new strain of COVID-19 that could spread more quickly than previous strains. U.S. authorities announced Thursday that passengers arriving on flights from the United Kingdom will need to test negative for coronavirus before departure, the latest restriction imposed due to a new COVID-19 variant. News of the strain, believed to be more transmissible, led to nations around the world closing their borders to travelers from the UK. The new rule takes effect Monday and requires a negative test within 72 hours of departure. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said in a statement. The U.S. in March halted the arrival of foreign nationals who had visited the UK in the preceding 2 weeks, which significantly cut air traffic from there. Some airlines, including British Airways and Delta, had already agreed to require passengers test negative before departure to New York from Britain because of the new strain. Meanwhile, Hong Kong extended its compulsory quarantine to 3 weeks for almost all international travelers from Friday, saying the measure was needed to prevent new, more infectious coronavirus variants from spreading. The government said expert advice suggested that the incubation period of the virus could be longer than 14 days in some people, so passengers will now have to undergo compulsory quarantine in designated hotels for 3 weeks rather than the previous 2. Only travelers arriving from mainland China, Macau, and Taiwan will be exempt from the tighter restrictions. The government also announced a ban on people who have stayed in South Africa in the past 21 days from entering Hong Kong. A new variant of the coronavirus, believed to be more infectious, has been spreading in South Africa, and several other countries have placed restrictions on travelers from that nation. Since Tuesday, flights from Britain have also been banned from Hong Kong following the discovery of a new strain of coronavirus there. Health officials said 2 students returned to Hong Kong from the UK might have been infected by this new variant. And Turkey will receive its first shipment of China's Sinovac coronavirus vaccine within days, as preliminary domestic tests showed it was 91% effective, according to Health Minister Farentin Koca on Thursday. Ankara in the next few days will also sign a deal with Pfizer-BioNTech for 4.5 million doses, with the option to buy 30 million more from the U.S. pharmaceutical giant and its German partner, according to Koca. Turkey will initially receive 3 million doses of Sinovac and have the option for 50 million more as it begins inoculations next month, starting with healthcare workers and the most vulnerable. Koca said the first shipments of the Chinese vaccine will be sent to Turkey on Sunday. The nation of 83 million has officially recorded 19,115 COVID-19 deaths and 2.2 million virus infections. Besides the occasional miniature tree and paper chains hung from cabs, there was little festive cheer for the thousands of truckers stuck on an old airfield in southeast England on the eve of December 25. Several thousand cargo trucks have been trapped for days around the southern English port of Dover since France closed borders with the UK in a bid to stop the spread of a new coronavirus strain. Army personnel were going from lorry to lorry conducting rapid coronavirus tests that give a result in some 40 minutes as part of measures to try to start up travel again. At one point, they sounded their horns together in frustration. The chaos has triggered delays also from mainland Europe, although rail and sea links between the UK and France will remain open over the holidays to clear the backlog, according to Britain. In other news, Ethiopia's military killed 42 people, allegedly among those responsible for massacring more than 100 civilians in a troubled western part of the country, according to local officials on Thursday. The federal troops also seized firearms and arrows during the operation. The government of the Benishangul-Gumuz region said after gunmen waged the brutal pre-dawn assault on Wednesday, in which dozens were also injured. The Ethiopia Defense People has destroyed 42 anti-peace forces who attacked civilians yesterday in the medical zone of Beni Shango Gumuz, the regional government said in a statement. Contests over land and resources in that area have spurred violence between ethnic groups, and Wednesday's massacre was just the latest gruesome atrocity in the region in recent months. The Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, a government-affiliated but independent body which first reported the massacre, said no security or police forces were stationed in the area when the attack occurred. The attackers set fields and homes ablaze, burning people alive as they slept. Boko Haram jihadists killed at least 7 people in a Christmas Eve assault on a village in Nigeria's restive northeast, according to local sources. Security agencies had in recent days warned of an increased risk of attack during the holiday. Fighters and trucks and motorcycles stormed Pemi, a predominantly non-Muslim village in Borno State Thursday, shooting indiscriminately and setting buildings on fire, according to Abwaku Kabu, a militia leader. In many parts of Nigeria, communities have resorted for self-defense to armed vigilantes or militias who work alongside the army. President Muhammadu Buhari, in a statement on Thursday, said he reiterated the promise of his administration to remain unyielding in confronting the Boko Haram insurgency as well as other forms of criminality. The decades-long conflict in Nigeria's northeast has killed 36,000 people and displaced around 2 million from their homes, according to the United Nations. Violence has spread to neighboring Niger, Chad, and Cameroon, prompting regional countries to form a military coalition to fight the jihadist groups. In other news, Japan's former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe apologized to lawmakers on Friday over a scandal involving payments for supporters, a day after prosecutors said they would not indict him in the case. The country's longest-serving Prime Minister has denied any wrongdoing, but he acknowledged that he had made statements to Parliament that were subsequently shown to be false. It turned out that I gave explanations that are contrary to the facts, Abe said at the lower house. Even though I was not aware of it, I feel a moral responsibility. I deeply regret this and apologize to my fellow lawmakers, he added. The case revolves around dinners organized on the eve of government-sponsored cherry blossom viewing parties. His office is alleged to have paid more than 8 million yen, or $76,000, for the dinners, attended by supporters over 5 years until 2019, failing to report the expenditures as required by Japanese law. Abe had previously denied that his political office had paid for the dinners. He was questioned by prosecutors over the case, but on Thursday they said they would not take further action against him. About 100 mourners are holding a vigil in Columbus, Ohio, after the killing of an unarmed African-American man by police, again sparking a fresh wave of outrage against racial injustice and police brutality in the United States. Andre Morris Hill, 47, was in the garage of a house on Monday night when he was shot several times by a police officer who had been called to the scene for a minor incident. Take a look.
Because I think we all need to speak up. Everyone needs to speak up and say that this has to change because it's been going on for generations.
He was he was a 47-year-old black man who was shot and killed, hands up with his phone lit up at about 1:30 in the morning. You know, it's just really unfortunate. He was killed the day before Casey Goodson Jr.'s funeral, 3 days before Christmas.
Body cam footage shows Hill walking towards the policeman holding a cell phone in his left hand while his other hand cannot be seen. Seconds later, the officer fired and Hill collapsed. The footage has no sound and it is not clear why the officer, Adam Coy, fired Hill. Was not carrying a weapon. Coy and his colleague waited several minutes before approaching the victim, who was still alive but died later. The killings come after a summer in which the U.S. was rocked by historic protests against racial injustice and police brutality, sparked by the May killing of the African-American man George Floyd, also unarmed, suffocated beneath the knee of a white police officer in Minneapolis. Horrified passers-by filmed his death with the footage swiftly going viral. Russian authorities on Friday launched a criminal probe into an ally of Kremlin foe Alexei Navalny and raided her flat for allegedly threatening a man Navalny said took part in his poisoning. Investigators accuse Lyubov Sobol of trespassing with the use of violence or a threat to use it after she rang the doorbell of the alleged agent from Federal Security Service, the country's main security agency. Sobol's lawyer, Vladimir Voromlin, told AFP that the opposition activist was currently a witness in the probe, but added that he expected Sobol to be charged later Friday. Just after 7 a.m. on Friday, the 33-year-old opposition activist posted a video on Twitter from inside her apartment before going incommunicado. In the video, her 7-year-old daughter can be heard crying as someone pounds on the front door, demanding it be opened. On Monday, Navalny said he had tracked an alleged chemical weapons expert with the FSB named Konstantin Kudryavtsev into admitting the domestic intelligence agency had sought to kill him this summer by placing poison in his underwear. Later Monday, Sobol went to the Moscow apartment where Kudryavtsev is believed to live. She was detained by police at the scene and questioned for hours. Sobol's lawyer said the probe had been launched following a complaint from Kudryavtsev's mother-in-law. Western governments say Navalny, 44, was poisoned with a Soviet-era Novichok nerve agent in a case that has further dented Moscow's relations with leading European countries and sparked mutual sanctions. The Kremlin has admitted that security agents have tailed Navalny but denied any attempts to poison him. The news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by RJK Services Manpower Agency Corporation.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Hey there, Arnie Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net 25.
The Brexit trade and security deal was finalized on the eve of December, just a week before the United Kingdom finally leaves the orbit of the 27-nation bloc, its biggest trading partner. But unusually, among trade deals, businesses will face more hurdles, bureaucratic hurdles, than they did while the UK was a member of the EU. We'll learn more about it. Here's Janelle Kasuga reporting live from the United Kingdom. Hello, Janelle.
Hello, Alma. Britain and the European Union struck a trade deal on Thursday after 10 months of intense negotiation, which allowed them to soften the economic shock of Brexit. The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson made an announcement at a press conference. Let's listen in.
I think this deal means a new stability and a new certainty in what has sometimes been a fractious and difficult relationship. We will be your friend, your ally, your supporter, and indeed, never let it be forgotten, your #1 market. Because although we left the EU, this country will remain culturally, emotionally, historically, strategically, geologically attached to Europe. Not least, of course, through the 4 million EU nationals who have requested to settle in the UK over the last 4 years and who make an enormous contribution to our country and to our life. We've taken back control of our laws and our destiny. We've taken back control of every jot and tittle of our regulation in a way that is complete and unfettered. From January the 1st, we are outside the customs union and outside the single market. British laws will be made solely by the British Parliament, interpreted by UK judges sitting in UK courts, and the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice will come to an end. We will be able to...
Britain formally left the EU in January after a deeply divisive referendum in 2016, the first country to split from the political and economic project that was born as the continent rebuilt in the aftermath of World War II. But London remains tied to the EU's rules during a transition period that runs until midnight on December 31st, when the UK will leave the bloc's single market and customs union. With Britain outside the EU, single market and customs area, cross-channel traders will still face a battery of new regulations and delays. Economists expect both economies, already weakened by the coronavirus epidemic, to take a hit as supply chains are disrupted and costs increase. Business breathed a sigh of relief, but called for greater clarity over services and for the move to a new regime as smooth as possible. Meanwhile, leaders around the continent were quick to herald the 11-hour accord that heads off the threat of Britain crashing out of the EU after 47 years of shared history with no follow-on rules. The markets had largely anticipated the announcement of an agreement, and the British pound, which made clear gains on Wednesday, was up by 0.38% against the US dollar on Thursday. Back to you, Alma.
All right. With this post-Brexit trade deal now sealed, are there any big changes that will happen or affect the people and businesses there and around Europe? Can you tell us about that?
Yes, Alma. Both sides warned that major changes are coming from the first of citizens of the UK and EU will lose the free market to live and work between the two. In a statement from Brussels, it said the EU and the UK will form two separate markets, two distinct regulatory and legal spaces. This will create barriers to trade in goods and services and to cross-border movement and exchanges that do not exist today in both directions. Alma?
What about for students and the youth there in the United Kingdom? How will they be affected by this?
Well, Alma, one of the biggest changes that we'll see from the Brexit deal is that university students will no longer be able to participate in what we have as the Erasmus program. This is a scheme we have in the UK that offers student exchanges, work experience and apprenticeships within Europe. Instead, the Prime Minister has said that Erasmus will be replaced with a UK-led scheme instead, so that students will not only experience European universities, but universities all around the world. Alma?
All right, thank you very much, Janelle, for your updates there in the United Kingdom. And we'll hear more of Brexit and as we follow this developing story. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alma. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Janelle Kasuga. We live in interesting times.
In a related news, the director of the United Kingdom in a Changing Europe, Anand Menon, reflected on the implications of the post-Brexit trade deal reached between Britain and the EU. He said the deal will make trade harder as trade will be slower and more expensive. Let's listen in.
It means there is a deal and not no deal. And I think no deal would have been damaging, not just economically, where we'd have had tariffs and quotas to deal with. But also, I think politically, if the talks had broken up, there would have been a lot of ill will between the UK and the EU. That would have made it very, very hard for the two sides to collaborate. And it was interesting today, wasn't it? President von der Leyen said, we have a basis for collaboration when it comes to climate and a whole host of other issues. That basis would not have been there without a deal. But, and this is the big but, the deal does not mean things continue as they are. It will mean a huge number of changes for how we interact with and particularly how we trade with the European Union. And the fact of the matter is, this trade deal makes trade harder. Trade will become slower and more expensive between the UK and the EU, and that in turn will have economic implications. I think in both sides, I don't think it was Boris Johnson alone. President Macron was holding up progress on fishing at one point as well. I think in both France and the UK and in other countries, fisheries might be a relatively small part of the national economy, but it is politically totemic. It is symbolic. It represents something. It has a political weight far beyond its economic significance. And I think it's because of that that we ended up spending so much time in these talks on fisheries.
Like all nations, Britain has an exclusive economic zone, or EEZ, that stretches up to 200 miles from its shores. EU members, including Britain until January this year, long agreed to share management of their zones and develop a common fisheries policy, or CFP, that allocated quotas of different stocks to each nation's fishing fleet. More than 100 different species have been managed jointly by the EU and the UK in the North Sea and North Atlantic. On top of the CFP, there is limited access for certain EU countries' vessels to Britain's territorial waters between 6 and 12 miles from the coast, based on historic fishing practices. An agreement surfaced after the EU proposed ceding around 25% of the value of hauls fished in British waters by European fleets after 5.5 years, the bloc having initially sought a 6-year transition period. Earlier in the negotiations, Britain was pushing for an 80 or 60% cut in the EU share, phased in over only 3 years, and that was unacceptable to the Europeans. After the transition period, rules governing mutual access to fishing zones will be negotiated annually. French fishermen's group CNPMEM has complained that annual renegotiation will prevent visibility and impede investments after the accord emerged. EU negotiator Michel Barnier promised Brussels that Brussels would stand by Europe's fishing crews. A European diplomat acknowledged concerns that Britain could shut out EU boats after the transition period, adding if the EU were ultimately not satisfied with the new quota arrangements, it could seek to impose measures against the UK fishing sector.
Republicans on Thursday blocked an effort to amend the hard-won pandemic relief package to more than triple direct payments to struggling Americans, something demanded by President Donald Trump. After months of partisan bickering, legislators late Monday finally approved a $900 billion stimulus package to help families and businesses struggling to survive the hit to the economy from the coronavirus before millions lose their benefits. The legislation includes one-time payments of $600 to most taxpayers, but Trump dropped a bombshell on the celebrations this week, hinting he might veto the bill unless the amount was increased to $2,000. Democrats, who have been pushing for months to increase pandemic support, cheered his statement, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi challenged Republicans to support an amendment to boost the dollar amount. The Democratic-controlled House of Representatives held a Christmas Eve pro forma session, normally a brief affair with little business, in an effort to win bipartisan approval to send the revised payments to Trump's desk for signature. But Republicans refused to agree to the change. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi immediately lambasted Republicans and vowed to call the House back on Monday to approve the amendment in a regular session. In other news, oil prices increased on Thursday over a fall in U.S. oil stocks and a decline in the U.S. first-time jobless claims, as both signal a possible oil demand and economic rebound. International benchmark Brent crude traded at $51.42 US per barrel at 6:42 GMT for a 0.35% increase after closing Wednesday at $51.24 US a barrel. At the same time, American benchmark West Texas Intermediate traded at $48.28 US a barrel for a 0.33% increase after ending the previous session at $48.12 US per barrel. A decline in U.S. crude oil inventories last week is driving the upward trend in oil prices, signaling a rebound in crude demand in the U.S., the world's largest oil consumer. Commercial crude oil inventories in the U.S. dropped by 600,000 barrels last week relative to the market expectation of a 3.2 million barrel a draw. A surprise drop in gasoline stocks was also seen with a fall of 1.1 million barrels to 237.8 million barrels.
Montenegro's government is shutting down its national carrier, burdened with mounting debts that left it dependent on state subsidies. We cannot take any decision that would be legal to prolong the life of Montenegro Airlines, according to the Minister of Investment, Miladin Bojanic, on Thursday at a press conference. He also said that the tiny Balkan country of around 600,000 people would aim to get a new carrier off the ground in 6 to 9 months. Montenegro Airlines fleet consisted of 4 leased planes, 3 Embraer 1955 and a Fokker F100, serving around 30 destinations worldwide, especially during the summer season. It boasted annual revenues of 70 to 80 million euros, but still had to take on debt to keep flying. That left the company vulnerable when the coronavirus pandemic wiped out air traffic this year.
Cargo workers at British Airways will strike from Friday until January 2nd over a pay row, with a new coronavirus strain already delaying goods arriving in the UK. Around 850 workers will strike, affecting transportation of fresh food and other items flown by IAG Cargo, a spokesman for the Unite Union said Thursday. IAG is the parent company or parent group of BA. Unite said BA Cargo staff, mainly based at London's Heathrow Airport, faced cuts to pay off up to 25% or thousands of pounds per worker. The 9-day strike will cause severe disruption to the company's ability to bring goods into the UK, a Unite statement said. BA disputed Unite's claims on pay and urged the union to help resolve the situation through more talks. Eagle News will be right back. Don't go away.
This portion is brought to you by Reefs Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mga mahalagang pangyayari na naganap di lamang sa bansa, kundi maging sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo, ating balikan sa Pilipinas 2020. Tinutukan ng Eagle News Team sa iba't ibang sulok ng bansa, pati na sa ipayong dagat. Pilipinas 2020. Hatid sa inyo ng Net25, Radyo Agila, EagleNews.ph at ng Eagle News Live. Pilipinas 2020. Abangan!
Now to the world's coral reefs, every one of which will soon disappear without drastic reductions in greenhouse gas emissions to stop oceans warming up, according to UN experts. The warning from the United Nations Environment Program, or UNEP, comes in a new report which says that if the world continues to rely heavily on fossil fuels, all of the world's reefs will turn white or bleach by the end of the century. Bleaching happens when water temperatures rise and corals expel the colorful algae that live among their branches. Although bleached corals are still alive and can recover their algae if conditions improve. If this does not happen, they will die. Now, this worst-case scenario also predicts that reefs will see annual severe bleaching by 2034, 9 years earlier than previously thought. UNEP said if countries manage to exceed current pledges to limit their carbon emissions by 50%, severe bleaching could be delayed until 2045. The agency noted that the loss of coral reefs would have devastating consequences not only for the marine life, but also for over 1 billion people who benefit from them.
Now back here in the Philippines, Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, on Friday recorded 1 earthquake in Taal Volcano in the past 24 hours. It said the emission of steam-laden plumes from Taal's main crater vents was very weak, and that ground deformation parameters based on continuous GPS monitoring from March 29 to the present indicated slow and slight inflation of the northwestern sector of Taal's caldera, which was also recorded by electronic tilt on the northwest volcano island starting the second week of July. In contrast, GPS data from the southwestern sector of the caldera and volcano island yielded no significant change after the huge post-eruption subsidence, according to PHIVOLCS. Alert level 1, or abnormal, is maintained over Taal Volcano, which means sudden steam-driven or phreatic explosions, volcanic earthquakes, minor ashfall, and lethal accumulations or expulsions of volcanic gas can occur and threaten areas within the Taal Volcano island. PHIVOLCS strongly recommended that entry into TVI, or Taal's permanent danger zone, especially the vicinities of the main crater and the Daang Castilla fissure, must remain strictly prohibited. People have also been advised to take precaution due to ground displacement across fissures, possible ashfall, and minor earthquakes. Civil aviation authorities must also advise pilots to avoid flying close to the volcano, as airborne ash and ballistic fragments from sudden explosions and wind-remobilized ash may pose hazards to aircraft.
And staying in the Philippines, a 6.3 magnitude quake rocked the country, according to the USGS, with residents in the capital, Manila, reporting buildings shaking and Catholic Christmas Day masses interrupted, but there were no reports of damage. The quake struck in Batangas province on the main island of Luzon at a depth of 114 kilometers at 7:43 a.m. local time, according to USGS. The agency initially said the quake strength was 6.2 and 108 kilometers deep. Policeman Alan Megano in the nearby town of Balayan said, and I quote, "The office furniture and equipment swayed, but nothing was broken." Strong tremors were felt in the areas of Quezon City, Mandaluyong, San Juan in Metro Manila, and Rizal and parts of Cavite. It issued no tsunami warning. The Philippines is situated on the Pacific Ring of Fire, an arc of intense seismic activity that stretches from Japan through Southeast Asia and across the Pacific Basin. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Impormasyong mahalaga sa taong bayan. Patas na pagbabalita. Papakinggan ang magkabilang panig. Lilinawin ang mga issue at kaagad na ihahatid ng objektibo.
Mata ng Agila. Dumadagit ng pinakasariwang pangyayari, hindi lamang sa loob ng bansa, kundi sa iba't ibang panig ng daigdig. Mula sa Eagle News teams at sa tulong ng makabagong teknolohiya, tiyak na makakalap kaagad ang katotohanan. Para sa mas matalas, malinaw at malalimang pagbabalita, ito ang mas pinatalas na Mata ng Agila. Inihahatid ng veteranong broadcast journalist na si Eli Saludar. Kasama si Binibining Pilipinas Intercontinental 2019, Emma Tiglao. At pinangungunahan ng batikang mamamahayag ng bansa, Vic De Leon Lima. Mata ng Agila, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 6 hanggang alas 8 ng gabi, dito sa Net 25.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
The search for the best continues. Tagisan ng Galing Part 2 is now accepting audition entries. If you are 21 to 59 years old and have what it takes to be the next Tagisan ng Galing Grand Winner as a solo performer, duet, trio, band, or grouped act, submit your audition entries now. Just follow these guidelines. To submit audition entries for the singing category, contact Nikki at 0977-651-9504. This is your chance to be Tagisan ng Galing's grand winner and win 2 million pesos. For more details and updates, visit and like the Tagisan ng Galing Facebook page. What are you waiting for? Join now!
It's really PM is the key dahil tuwing 8 p.m. simula January 4, Monday to Friday, iaain na ang kantahan at kainang rolled into one. Abangan sina JC Parker at Marcelito Pomoy because it's time to sing, it's time to eat sa It's Singing Time! Dito lang yan sa Net 25.
It's Singing Time!
Tuloy-tuloy ang saya sa 2021 dahil hatid ng Net25 para sa inyo ang pinakabagong game show na talaga namang mapapakanta ka sa sarap. It's Singing Time na! Starting January 4, 2021, Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. Dito lang yan sa Net25.
It's Singing Time!
only just recovered from the hurricane season, Floridians now face a new menace: showers of iguanas. The Sunshine State is suffering an unusual cold snap with temperatures set to fall to freezing during the season, which means iguanas will start falling from trees. The cold-blooded lizards literally freeze up when the temperature drops below 4 degrees centigrade and fall from on high, posing a real danger for anyone underneath. In recent years, the authorities have urged Floridians to call as many of the illegal immigrants as they can, with iguanas slipping over the Mexican border and in from the Caribbean in vast numbers. Frost can't kill them, however, and some misguided locals have been known to cover fallen lizards in towels to warm them up or even take them home, a big no-no for experts. For defrosted, iguanas are particularly dangerous and can quickly turn vicious.
And finally in our news, each time she wields her lasso.
All very excited for that. We need more female superheroes.
That's true. Can we be?
Let's try that. Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. See you again tomorrow.
I can't be a superhero. I'm scared of iguanas. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles. We'll see you back tomorrow, and we live in interesting times.